The male sperm is essentially just a super fast delivery vehicle. It's incredibly small, streamlined, driven by a little tail called a flagellum, and its one and only job is to just rocket those paternal chromosomes straight to the site of fertilization. But in stark contrast, the female oocyte provides absolutely everything else. I mean, the cellular machinery, the nourishment, the genetic programming to support the embryo for nearly a week after conception. It's doing all the heavy lifting.
But to understand why this massive size gap exists today, we actually have to look way back at our evolutionary past, to a concept called isogamy. In this ancient ancestral state, reproducing cells were morphologically identical. They were the exact same size. And because there was no size difference, there were actually no distinct biological males or females. Instead, there were just genetically distinct mating types, usually just called plus and minus, which basically just stopped them from self-fertilizing. And believe it or not, isogamy actually still exists today in certain multicellular algae and fungi.
However, over time, evolution shifted the vast majority of sexually reproducing species to anisogamy, which is a strongly bimodal distribution of gamete size, basically big ones and small ones. And here is a really fascinating fact for you. This size split gives us the single, true biological definition of the sexes. Males and females aren't biologically defined by chromosomes or physical appearance or even behavior. It's strictly based on gamete size. Males produce the small, highly mobile gametes, and females produce the large, nutrient-rich, immobile gametes. That's the core distinction.
So the crucial question we really need to ask here is why on earth did evolutionary biology move away from those perfectly equal-sized gametes in favor of this drastic extreme size difference? I mean, why break something that was theoretically working fine for our ancient ancestors? Well, the transition from isogamy to anisogamy is actually one of the most critical enigmas in evolutionary biology, and solving it requires us to look at the incredibly severe dangers associated with two cells fusing together.
It turns out the answer to that enigma lies in averting a total cellular disaster. And this brings us to an absolutely brilliant concept defined by Cosmides and Tooby, known as the Organelle conflict hypothesis. This hypothesis is a real game changer because it frames the evolution of different-sized gametes not just as some random structural change, but as a mandatory biological peace treaty, one that was literally required to prevent mutually assured destruction at a microscopic level.
So, here's the core of it. Cosmides and Tooby theorized that the fusion of two perfectly equal cells carries a massive hidden hazard. Think about it. If both gametes brought their own cytoplasm and their own organelles, like mitochondria or chloroplasts, to the newly formed zygote, it would spell total disaster. Because these organelles contain their own unique genetic lineages, throwing two different sets into the exact same cell would cause them to brutally compete for dominance. It would trigger an all-out cellular civil war, fundamentally destroying the resulting zygote from the inside out. No way that survives.
So what's the solution? Well, it's essentially a brokered biological peace treaty. To resolve this brutal internal conflict, nuclear genes evolved to enforce what's called uniparental inheritance, which simply means organelles are inherited from only one parent. The rules of engagement were firmly set. The sperm must completely discard its cytoplasm and mitochondria, acting purely as a stripped-down DNA delivery system, while the egg gets to retain its own. By ensuring only one set of organelles actually makes it inside, the civil war is entirely averted.
And you can actually see this peace treaty in action when you look at the incredibly complex, heavily partitioned developmental pathways of plant gametes. It shows just how highly specialized these structures became to ensure a perfectly conflict-free delivery. Notice how completely distinct the male and female paths are. The pollen tube basically acts as a highly polarized vehicle designed explicitly just to transport sperm, while the female embryo sac is heavily fortified to receive this single delivery and block any multiple entries. All this wild complexity you're seeing is the direct evolutionary result of needing to safely fuse genetic material while strictly enforcing that organelle peace treaty. Now, to make sure we're getting the full picture here, we also have to look at another foundational explanation for this asymmetry, which is Parker's disruptive selection model. This one is more of an economic theory modeling a sort of tragedy of the commons. Imagine an organism has a strictly fixed energy budget, right? There is a direct trade-off between the number of gametes it can make and their individual size. Parker theorized that some mutant individuals started making smaller gametes, allowing them to produce vastly more of them using that exact same energy budget. And this created a wild evolutionary dynamic. The small gametes essentially became parasites, specializing in locating and exploiting the resources of the large gametes. Meanwhile, the large gametes became the hosts, forced to provision the zygote just to ensure it had enough nutrients to actually survive.
But you know what's really fascinating? It's how Cosmides and Tooby's Civil War resolution layers so neatly alongside Parker's economic model, as well as a third theory, Hurst's cytoplasmic pathogen hypothesis. These aren't mutually exclusive ideas at all. They actually layer together perfectly to explain our reproductive reality. While Parker focuses on the resource trade-offs and Cosmides and Tooby focus on preventing that internal civil war, Hurst suggests that the sperm stripping away its cytoplasm actually insulates the zygote from intracellular sexually transmitted diseases. Put it all together, and it's just a brilliant multi-layered defense system baked right into the very size of our cells.
And here is where this whole concept gets really mind-blowing. This is where this microscopic asymmetry cascades into the macro-level behavior we see around us every single day. Because the female egg is massive and packed with all those organelles, it represents a huge initial parental investment compared to the tiny, super cheap to produce sperm. This physical reality instantly positions females as the limiting resource in the mating pool. And that in turn drives the evolution of fierce sexual competition in males who have to fight to fertilize those rare eggs, and it results in intense reproductive choosiness in females who absolutely must safeguard their very expensive investment.
So bringing this all together, isn't it just incredible to think about? The entire sprawling drama of animal mating, from the majestic, elaborate displays of birds of paradise to the intense, violent territorial battles of mammals, all of it fundamentally stems from a microscopic necessity. It all traces back to an ancient biological peace treaty, a trick required just to keep microscopic organelles from going to war inside the very first cell of life. What does that tell us about the hidden forces shaping the natural world around us? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope you never look at reproduction quite the same way again.